Late last night, it was revealed that Attorney General Jeff Sessions might have perjured himself during his nomination hearings by concealing multiple meetings that took place between himself and the Russian ambassador during the course of the last presidential campaign. One of the meetings was a private conversation between Sessions and Russian Ambassador Sergey Kislyak that took place in September in the senator's office. Seems like something you might remember. 2 months before the September meeting, Sessions attended a Heritage Foundation event in July on the sidelines of the Republican National Convention that was attended by about 50 ambassadors. When the event was over, a small group of those ambassadors approached Sessions as he was leaving the podium. Kislyak was among them, according to the Justice Department. Sessions then spoke individually to some of the ambassadors, including Kislyak, so it was an individual meeting as well. In the informal exchanges, the ambassadors expressed appreciation for his remarks, and some of them invited him to events they were sponsoring, according to the official. Now, in response to this, the Russian ambassador did not respond to requests for comment. Also, the Washington Post, which was one of the sources that broke the story, contacted all of the other members of the Senate Armed Services Committee, which of course Sessions served on. Of the 20 lawmakers who responded, every one of them, including Chairman John McCain, said that they had not met with the Russian ambassador last year. Although we shouldn't be surprised, especially at the RNC meeting, he is one of the most high-profile Trump surrogates, and so it makes sense that then the Russian ambassador, or other ambassadors as well, would want to meet with him.
So that last piece of context is very important, because if it turns out that 50 ambassadors are swarming everybody and this is fairly normal, okay, well, then it's an individual meeting with the Russian ambassador. You probably remember that. But then there's the one at your office. But what if the guys that are in the, on that committee are having meetings all the time with the Russian ambassador, and McCain had 3, and and somebody else had 4? Okay, that would be super important context. No, it turns out none of the people who responded on that committee, 20 out of the 26, said we had no meetings at all, and they gave further context.
Including the chairman.
Yeah, further context on that is that we were in the middle of an election, and it's not like we're meeting with the British ambassador about friendly terms or yada yada. We're in the middle of an election. There were already some allegations that the Russians were meddling in the election. That would have been weird, and it certainly would have been memorable.
Yeah, especially the second meeting, the later one that happened in Sessions' office. That was during the height of public discussion about whether there could be some sort of meddling in some form. Whether you think the meddling happened or not, it was in the political atmosphere at that point. And so, of course, Sessions is aware of that as a high-profile surrogate for the Trump campaign. Now, the actual meetings, of course, whether they happen commonly or not, are totally legal and might even be appropriate in most cases. That's not the problem. The problem is that during his nomination hearings, in 2 cases, it appears that he lied to conceal those meetings. Let's roll video 1. You're going to see the first instance of that.
And if there is any evidence that anyone affiliated with the Trump campaign communicated with the Russian government in the course of this campaign, what will you do?
Senator Franken, I'm not aware of any of those activities. I have been called a surrogate at a time or 2 in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians, and I'm unable to comment on it.
That's very important. What he said there is, I did not have communications with the comments. In later videos we're going to show you, he is going to attempt to change the question he was asked and change his response to it. But he was very clear there. I did not have communications. Now, he also tried to deny that he was a surrogate. I mean, look, Google Sessions surrogate and stop it at about December of last year. It's a million sources.
No,
he's a surrogate, okay?
That's not a question. I actually think that what he was trying to do there inartfully is set up the excuse he's about to, that he unleashed now once he's caught red-handed. I think he was trying to say, I was a surrogate for the Trump administration, and that's what they called me, but I did not have any contact with the Russian officials in that context.
But he didn't say that
But
there.
hold on. But he did it inartfully, because that's the lawyerly thing you say so you can later say, I wasn't lying, because he knows he had contact with the Russians. But he screwed up. He didn't say in that context. He said, I guess they called me a surrogate, and I did not have any contacts with the Russians, period.
Yeah.
So that's a lie. That's an unquestionable lie.
Yeah, you could have wrapped it up at the end, but the way he did it, it doesn't matter what it could have been, they say my pants are too tight, but I didn't have contact with the Russians. We don't care about the pants anymore. You said you didn't contact the Russians, and it turns out that you did. Now, that was only one of 2 cases. There was also a written question. In January, Patrick Leahy, the Democratic senator, asked Sessions for answers to written questions, one of which included this text. Several of the president-elect's nominees or senior advisors have Russian ties. Have you been in contact with anyone connected to any part of the Russian government about the 2016 election, either before or after Election Day? Leahy wrote. Sessions responded with one word, no. Now, in that case, he is going to attempt to say that his meetings with the Russian ambassador did not concern the campaign. I would have probably expanded my answer and provided some context rather than simply saying no, which seems like a blanket assertion that, of course, I didn't have any contact with them. But that is the tack that he's going to take.
It's not a close call. So his main excuse is, you meant did I meet with them? Yeah, I met with them. I just met with them as a senator and not as a Trump surrogate. Okay, but that wasn't the question. I didn't ask you if you met with them as a senator or a surrogate or whatever the hell other role you thought you were playing in your mind, right? Oh no, this morning when I came in, I was playing a caddy. Or I was playing a doctor. I was playing doctor in my head. I met them with them as a doctor because that was what was good. I don't care. My question was, did you meet with the Russians? And your unequivocal answer was, no, I did not meet with the Russians. That is 100% untrue. So hence we have perjury.
Exactly. Now that, of course, is a crime. Theoretically, if it is pursued and prosecuted, he could go to jail for literally for years for this. It seems at this point that that's unlikely, but nothing is impossible. And we're going to go on to further developments today on this story. What strikes me about this is, as with other cases, what was actually done so far as we know, is not a big deal. But it's the ridiculous lengths that they will go to hide their contact with Russian officials. Not just in his case, but of course Manafort had his weird thing. We can go back to that at some point. You had Flynn pretending he hadn't talked about things he had talked about, and Sessions lying to conceal meetings that are totally legal to have. That's what's bizarre at this point. And when you consider the massive shift in rhetoric for Sessions personally about Russia that he used to do before he signed on to Trump's campaign, and what you hear from him coming out of that RNC after he met with the Russian ambassador, it starts to seem even more bizarre.
So I want to be clear that we should have an investigation, obviously not led by one of the conspirators, who is now the Attorney General. We'll, of course, get to that conclusion in a second, because we don't know exactly what their intent was, and we don't know why they lied about it, both Flynn and Sessions. But we do know that they did actively cover it up, thereby leading to the common sense conclusion that they were trying to hide something. They were embarrassed about those meetings. Something happened at those meetings that they didn't want anybody else to find out about. And they would risk perjury and hence their careers, etc., to make sure you did not find out that they met with the Russians.
Yeah.
So now Flynn is gone. His career is gone because he lied about that when he could have been honest about it and maybe saved his career. So what in God's green earth were they talking about that they desperately didn't want anybody to find out at the risk of their careers and, in this case, possibly even a criminal indictment?
Yeah.
And that's a very fair question, and that's what needs to be investigated.
It's like they say, in some cases, especially in politics, the cover-up can be worse than the actual crime. And so I would say, if you are a member of Trump's administration, protect yourself and Trump. If you had some weird contact, come clean about it now, rather than letting a member of the intelligence community leak it or having the Washington Post or the New York Times investigate it. Now, there might not be any more, but we did find out today, so far seems fully legal, but in addition to Flynn meeting with the Russian ambassador back in December, apparently Jared Kushner was involved in that meeting as well. Now, we have no reason at present to believe that anything illicit was discussed or any laws were broken, but by tomorrow, we might find out about it. So I would say maybe they should put all their cards on the table before it becomes a major scandal for them.
And I would say one more common sense thing. Guys, there's that saying that John just told you that the cover-up is sometimes worse than the crime. No, but there's a reason what they're covering up. So meeting with the Russian ambassador is not a crime, but you're not covering it up for no reason. What happened in that meeting might be worse than the cover-up. That's why you covered it up.
Yeah, I guess.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, the reason that Nixon got in all that trouble was the cover-up of Watergate, but the reason he covered it up is because it's really bad when you break into the other political parties' offices and steal their stuff. That'll get you impeached. That's why they bothered to cover it up. Corporate media is awesome.
Wrong.
Independent media is the way to go.
Believe me, believe me.
Support independent media right now. Become a Young Turks member. TYTnetwork.com/join.